Hello and welcome to part 2 of the SC Launch Summit Keynote panel. I'd like to welcome everyone that's sitting on our panel, and I'd like to welcome all of y'all that are on the line with us today. We've got a great set of attendees and an even better set of panelists. So before we begin, I'd like to go over a couple of different housekeeping items. The most important one, if you can hear me, please raise your hand in the webinar controls. All right, let's see. All right, Dean, welcome. Kelsey, Steve, Ken, thank you so much. I'm glad all of y'all can hear me. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we're going to keep all of the audience audio muted, but we'll take questions at the very end, and you can type those questions throughout the webinar in the question controls, or you can hold those questions until the end. So I will say I will go right down the line. So if your question's at the top, it'll get asked first. So also, before we begin, I'd like to let everyone know to save the date for our currently scheduled 2021 SC Launch Summit, which will be held April 28th. Back at the Pastides Alumni Center in Columbia, so please save the date for that. And in addition to that, at this point, I'm going to ask everyone that is a specific SCRA company or an SC Launch company to listen loud for this announcement. At this point, you should have received our satisfaction survey that we have conducted through VisB Technologies, and we are relying on the data collected from our survey to better serve everyone on this line, all of your needs. So if you have not completed it at this point, please take a few minutes to do so. It's a short one with a unique link just for you, so you have to click on your very specific link. If you did not receive that, please let me know, and I will let Julie know or to send it out again. Or I think at this point, you know, we've got a couple workarounds. So if you haven't received it, don't hesitate to email me directly and let me know. My name is Julia Linton, and I serve as the operations manager for the SC Launch program. And to do a real introduction of the panel, I'd like to hand it over to Lee McElwennan, investment manager for the Midlands. Lee, over to you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Julia, very much. Really appreciate your setting this up and for getting us going. Again, my name is Lee McElwennan. I'm an investment manager for SCRA, assigned to the Midlands, and it's an honor to be back with you with a distinguished set of panelists. So why don't we go ahead? We want to make sure that we start and end on time. We have about 45 minutes, which is inclusive of some Q&A at the end. So I'll encourage you, as Julia did, to please send in any questions that you have, so we can make sure that we address the questions that you're most interested in. But before we get started, for those of you that weren't able to join us when we were there 6 months ago, I'd like for the panelists to kind of reintroduce yourself, just so everybody can get to know them. So Julie, I'll start with you, and then we'll just kind of go around the horn.
Sure. So I'm Julie Moreland. I'm CEO of VisB Technologies. I am one of the SC Launch portfolio companies. I'm very proud to be a part of the family. And my background is, I hate to say the word 30 plus years in automating behavioral science type products. So basically taking what's in PhD brainiacs' heads around how we could build products and then building a team, taking that to market, always SaaS, software as a service. So I'm kind of a one-trick pony. I basically take behavioral science type products, automate them, take them to market, and then exit. So I'm in the middle of doing, I think, my 5th. It's
Wow.
been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Julie. Harold?
Yeah, good morning. Tough act to follow there, but thanks, Julie. My name is Harold Hughes. I'm the founder and CEO of Bandwagon. We are an identity infrastructure company headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina. Our main market is focusing on the live event space, which includes in-person as well as virtual events. As you'd imagine, when it comes to in-person events and COVID-19, one of the biggest things is how can you have audiences of any major size be back together in any significance without being mindful of COVID restrictions and medical medical statements. And so we're helping out in that way. So I'm happy to share more about that. And then, of course, we've invested a little bit more time into virtual to help us navigate 2020 and kind of prepare ourselves for 2021. So I'm super excited to be here.
Great. Thanks, Harold. Ryan, over to you.
I'm Ryan Heafy. I am the co-founder and COO of 6 a.m. City, more commonly known in South Carolina as Greenville today, Cola today, and Charleston today. We are in the leading forefront of newsletter first media space. We're currently the fastest growing local media company in the country, and are going to be doubling in size next year. We're a portfolio company of SC Launch, closing a funding round here in the next 2 weeks, and kind of really excited about what this year's brought to us. And we have had a lot of changes since we last spoke.
Thanks, Ryan. That's for sure. Bill, I see you're glad to see your face. Over to you.
Good to see you guys. Yes, I'm Bill West, Ellipsis Technologies. We have a bot detection software primarily focused on e-commerce. We just couldn't read those squiggly little captcha letters anymore, so we came up with a technology that collects the timing and movement, behavioral events, keystroke down, keystroke up, touches, swipes, all that. And then we have machine learning algorithms so we can detect whether the site visitor is a human or not, and then we route them accordingly. Sell mostly to e-commerce through a series of apps on Shopify and WordPress, Magento and Drupal. And then we've, over the last year, while we were in survival mode during COVID, we did a number of integrations where we integrate with other people's technologies, and we're just, as they sell it, they opt in for our technology or whatever. And that's kind of kept us alive, although for the last year, we've postponed all new product introductions and some of the larger things we wanted to get about. But we survived. We're still cash positive, and we can hit next year, hopefully strong.
That's great. Thanks, Bill. Laura, over to you. It's good to have you with us. Laura, you there?
Okay, Laura is having some connection issues, so I'm trying to get her back on, and I'll let y'all know when she's back on.
Great. Well, I'll do just a brief intro on her behalf. Laura Boconfuso is the founder and CEO of VAM Robotics. Those of you that may have seen the press recently, Laura just got a remarkable honor as one of Time Magazine's 100 most, innovations, top innovations for this year, for 2020. So kudos to Laura, and she'll tell you a little bit about her company when she comes on. But it's great to hear. And just to reiterate, for us all, we really appreciate all of you for taking the time on the panelists, all our portfolio companies of SC Launch Inc., affiliate of SCRA. So it means we've invested in your company. So it's a pleasure to see you guys again. When we last spoke, COVID had just started, and we were kind of in the middle of a pivot. So what I thought we could focus on now is what's really changed for you over the last 6 months since you hit, and then what would you do differently? What have you really learned from the changes over the last 6 months? And whoever wants to kind of kick it off, that's, to me, that's the most primary topic. I think most everybody really wants to understand is how does it impact your business? And then we can drill into some of the specific parts of it. But Julie, you want to kick us off if you have some thoughts?
Sure. I think personally, the biggest thing I've learned this year is patience. So I am not a patient person, and my whole life I just get up and, like, before my feet hit the ground, I've already decided what are the first 3 things I'm going to do. I'm just kind of, that driving, typical entrepreneur, right? You eat and sleep and all that. So I think for me personally, this year has just taught me to realize that there's so much we cannot control, even though, we may run our businesses and put all of these things in place, that it all gets thrown out the window when you have something like the pandemic in 2020 roll around. But more practically, what changed for us this year is we're in the middle of an exit. We literally launched our exit strategy in February. So if that tells you anything of all of a sudden, all the companies, we've got 120 different large global entities that we are looking at and talking to, we were getting lots of really good conversations, but everybody's saying the same thing: is we need to wait a little while to kind of see how long this is going to go and how is it going to change businesses. So then we had to be patient, and one or two conversations would turn into 6 conversations, and you're still trying to get them to the altar. When normal times, like if we'd have launched our exit last year, it would have already been done. It would have been done, closed. So really what we've had to do is kind of step back and rework our messaging. And we actually then started targeting some companies that were thriving as a part of COVID as opposed to surviving. So think of the Zooms of the world, these virtual technologies. So we actually did something I think pretty smart back in August, as we said, let's go after the companies that are really growing really fast and they want to keep their market position. And so we did some of those adjustments that really helped us. Redid our messaging, and the messaging is working. We're going for a fear-based messaging as a look what you will lose if your competitor gets this.
Yeah.
And we're actually getting people's attention much quicker than it was a nice to have. This is a nice thing for you to add to your technology portfolio. And then, lastly, I think it was throw out all the assumptions that you made this time last year and at the beginning of the year. I basically started with a clean piece of paper in my notebook because I'm I like to write. I just said, if I were starting this company today and I knew nothing, like I hadn't done any of these plans, any of these strategies, how would I build it today?
Yeah.
And then the second thing I did is realizing that you're literally a heartbeat away from losing a key team member, or a team member losing a family member, which has happened. So we've had team members lose a parent, to COVID, and all of a sudden the world flips upside down and that person's not available. And we're already a lean team. So we actually started doing a lot more cross training to make sure that we were better prepared. We were not as prepared as we needed to be to have either somebody get sick for weeks or for them to have a family member and them have to be out. So practically speaking, it was doing the cross training, getting ready for the next team member. Somebody else is going to have either a family member or they're going to get sick for a few weeks, right? And not really be able to put 100% into the business.
Yeah, those are great points, Julie, especially on the fact of the availability of your staffing concerning the pandemic.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
the cross training aspect is wild to me. That's I mean, now that you've said it, it makes so much sense and sounds obvious. But yeah, having thought through that and how we do it on our team, that's definitely something we should probably investigate how we do more of as well. So thanks for mentioning that. For us, it's really been by leaning into what the event industry looked like. There were a lot of people that thought that our industry was going to, find a way to be back, and people were going to be in stadiums and this would all be over after election day kind of thing, right? And so I had to navigate what the market expectations were of what this was going to be, and really think through how we were going to weather the storm. And so we actually acquired a company over the summer. Well, it was early this spring. I don't think we'd announced it at the last one. And so we'd acquired a company that allowed us to focus on sub 1,000 person events, virtual events, basically creating an Eventbrite competitor and allowing us to continue to grow our business. And so one of the biggest things we were able to do was, everyone normally prepares for scaling up their business and trying to make sure that their business goes from, servicing 20,000 to being able to serve 50 or 100,000. For us, we were saying, like, can we go from serving 20,000 and 50,000 down to serving 2,000 and 1,000? And there are going to be lots of those events going on. So that was the number one thing. And the second thing was kind of to Julie's point, was really I leaned into being a better team leader and a better manager of time and resources. My team was working remotely and at home from March 16th, 17th until probably early mid-July. And so ultimately we changed when we had our team meetings and daily stand-ups and a lot of different things from a flexibility standpoint. And then ultimately, the team started to say like, hey, can we go back to the office? It's 4 of us. We have our own space. So I had to research like what would that look like? What protocols do we need to have in place? What resources do we need to have in place? I'm installing plexiglass and talking with the landlord about how the HVAC can be modified to an extent. And so all that happened. The team's been back in the office since July 13th. And it's been great to just constantly check on them and seeing how much different. I think the thing that people don't necessarily realize is that there are probably a lot of people who are able to do their job well during working at home. So tasks are still being completed, and therefore productivity looks like it's happening, but collaboration goes down and creativity goes down when you don't get to like stop and randomly say, I was thinking of this thing, and then just have that dialogue versus typing out in Slack or raising your hand in the Zoom. So those are the 2 things that I really thought through is, navigating our landscape for the industry we were serving, and then trying to be a little bit more creative as a team leader on how we kind of navigate all of this.
Did you guys go into the new office, or did you pivot office locations?
No. So we had just signed our office lease in February. So we had signed our office lease in February, which is ridiculous. A multi-year lease, had it outfitted, furnished. And then middle of March said, okay, everybody go home. So I said, hey, take your standing desk, take your ergonomic desk chair, take whatever resources from the office that makes it best. And then we went back in July. So it's 4 people there. Actually, it was 3 at the time. We've actually been able to hire a couple people through the pandemic, which I'm incredibly blessed and fortunate to do. SCRA and SC Launch have given us a lot of support. And so it's been important for us to kind of make sure we're providing jobs in the state of South Carolina, but also jobs that are going to help us get back to where we were. So yeah, fortunately, we've got a nice little 2,000 or 2,200 square foot space for 4 people.
That's pretty good. We're going the opposite direction as far as office space goes. When we started at the, early on in the spring, we ended up sending everybody home. Our offices are across the Southeast anyways, and in co-working spaces, and it ended up making sense for us we were positioned well to be in a remote workforce. We kind of took the assessment a lot of people did and what that cost structure looks like for us, especially as we go from the 7 cities we're in to doubling size next year. And, do you just keep adding offices? So in July or so, we brought people back to the offices, and we started having COVID scares, and then people actually getting COVID and then having to be out of the office, which posed its own challenge. And we ended up pulling the plug, saying everyone go back home. And then in October, we made the decision that we were going to create a remote workforce policy. We've put that fully in effect. And we've been able to pivot some of the funding we were spending on offices to our staff and create opportunities. So they do get together in their respective markets 1 day a week, starting the first week of January, at a location of their choice. But we've pivoted a lot of that office spend directly into the pockets of our employees, and then also took some of it back to the bank so that we could help make sure that our company is sustainable and more efficient going forward. And we'll maintain our headquarters location here in Greenville, but we're going into probably move into a new space in January or February with more divided office spaces than one big common open layout like we have currently, which has been interesting. And then to Julie's point, the cross-training element has been huge. We've been able to onboard like 6 new employees during COVID or more. And we use the platform called Trainual. I will sing its praises always. It allows us to onboard staff in 2 weeks as if they'd been there for 2 years. Probably the best process management training tool for small businesses that's out there. We absolutely love it and has been greatly beneficial to us. We're able to onboard staff in any city without even seeing them face to face. So that's been pretty awesome for us for this year.
Can you drop the link to that in the chat?
I can't see the chat, but yeah, I'll drop it.
Oh, okay.
It's trainual.com.
Or just send it to me. Maybe everyone else doesn't want it, but I do.
I got you. Bill, how you doing?
Yeah, it's been wacky. This has lasted a lot longer than we thought. We shut down on March 11th. We left the offices and we figured it'd be 2 to 3 months. I think Bob Quinn at SCRA told me to probably plan through the summer, but holy cow, this is really something. It's we've worked into a pretty decent routine with remote working, our team. It's mostly developers, it's all developers. We've had to change our approach in that, for example, we were gonna put some marketing into WordPress. We launched our WordPress app right at the beginning of the year. WordPress, as you know, now is 35% of the internet, and it's projected to be 50% of the internet by the 2025. So it's an enormous market. Even 0.1% of the market in WordPress is a really nice business. So we had plans to put marketing into it and really push it. But then we needed to really conserve our money. So we went with third-party distributors. We have a guy in England and a guy in the Netherlands and people in South America and Asia, and they represent our product at a deep discount, but at least we're not spending money. It's all success-based. So it's a very different approach than we would have done if COVID wasn't around and we were spending the money on other things. All of the new products that we planned this year after WordPress, we've canceled. We had new integrations, all that is on hold. And we just, we had to assess where we are. And, I think our team, and we bring it up on our daily calls, and we had to focus on blocking and tackling, just the basic stuff to go day to day and survive and make money in creative ways. As our technical guys tell us all the time, if I get too excited, we have to sell what's on the truck right now. So we say that every day. We're not developing any new products right now. We're selling what's on the truck. A lot of that's been put off. And something I've been doing, other than expense management and trying to squeeze revenue out of existing channels, is we've been cutting deals with people where we take an equity position. We don't buy it. We say, we'll be paid partially in equity. So some of these companies are quite valuable right now. So we've been really lifting the balance sheet up as we go along with our day-to-day P&L. So and incredibly and unexpected, and I don't think I would have done that if it wasn't for COVID. We would have just done it the way we always did it. But we have pretty strong equity positions in some really nice companies right now. So that could help us down the road. Now they have to exit, just like now we're looking at many
That's a great way to conserve cash, though, Bill. It looks like you still with us, Bill?
That's interesting. I was going to ask him, like, how does that work? Because then the exits become the company's assets, and then his investors then, I guess, share in that outsized return. So that's interesting. I haven't considered Bandwagon taking equity positions in companies. So that's a new one.
That way, it really would be. It's certainly an interesting, when you look at the long haul, to kind of increase the value. Bill, it looks like you might be frozen. And Laura, if you're out there, if you could join us real quick and kind of get your thoughts on the question about what's really changed for you. And then do a brief intro of yourself. I tried to do it, but I'm sure I did you.
I appreciate that. I'm not sure if y'all can see me at all. If my video is working, I tried to join this meeting in a number of different ways, but I think it was just a little bit tedious getting me on there. But if you can't see me, I have robots surrounding me right now, and they may speak from time to time, so I apologize in advance. If you hear them talking to you, I tried to keep them quiet, but it's difficult. I really appreciate all the comments from everybody on the panel. I agree 100%. I've been nodding over here adamantly about all the things that I've been hearing everybody doing. I feel like it resonates with me, and I think with people on our team. One thing that I think we've spent a lot of time doing that we hadn't spent nearly enough time doing before COVID, because we were forced to, was really looking at and evaluating our operational processes, how we operate as a team, making things more efficient in terms of communication, in terms of execution, and then accountability. I think, everybody has different sort of currencies, things that they really value more than others. And I think when you're in this process of sort of redefining how you work as a team, I think those things really come out, and they can be really helpful, right? I think not just with your customer base and learning more about what matters to them, but also within your own team. What do people really value personally, individually, and how does that contribute to the team's overall effectiveness? So, like I said, that's my 2 cents. I totally agree with the rest of what people were saying. I think actually what Bill had mentioned about taking equity positions in other companies, I just talked to somebody else a couple days ago about this as well. And Harold, I know you had said that was the first time you heard of it. I hadn't heard about it until a couple of days ago either, and apparently this is becoming more common. It's an interesting thing. I think would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Bill, are you back on? You want to talk just a bit more about that, or we've got a couple of questions I have to reflect on?
Bill had a little power outage, and so he is doing via audio only in just a second.
Okay,
We're
no problem.
looking at the acquisition side on the flip side for us to expand into markets faster and pick up other smaller businesses that are pre-existing in other markets. I just think there's clearly a ton of M&A type activity going on where there's assets that are upside down that are easy to acquire right now. Yeah, unfortunately for other folks, but it's beneficial for us in a lot of ways. There is definitely a large changing landscape in a lot of different arenas right now very quickly. So those who are positioned to take advantage are clearly doing so in a big way.
Which is so when we acquired our company, it was like, okay, this is an opportunity for us to spend cash to acquire IP on a product that will allow, it's basically a build or buy exercise, right? And so that's all it was. So the idea, and one of the offers, we were talking to them potentially about, them getting equity. And I was like, yeah, we're not interested in giving you equity. We want to just pay you in cash. There's 2 more companies that are in my space that'll go out of business in the next 2 weeks. And if we were in a stronger cash position, we would consider buying some of their IP, if not buying the whole company. But it was just like, all right, do we want to spend our cash acquiring more IP that we have to integrate, or do we want to stay a 7-person team hunkered down? So I'm definitely a big fan of what we're seeing as far as the M&A space. And there's, not to say that we won't acquire another company in the next 6 to 9 months, but yeah, I definitely am interested in the part where you own part of a company that's running versus just acquiring them wholly. So acquiring them wholly to me makes all the sense. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to do some research and maybe hit up Bill separately.
All right. Perfect timing, Bill. Welcome back. Can you hear us?
I am on. We just got our power back, so theoretically I'll be back online too. But I dialed in.
Okay, great. You kind of gave everyone a little tickler when you mentioned your business acquiring or holding equity in another, and the conversation has continued on that. So welcome back. I'll let you pick that back up.
No, that was basically it. I mean, we were on the phone with a company in Silicon Valley, oddly enough, and they were talking about that they were going to spend $50,000 to build an adjunct to their product. And one of our technicians texted me during the call and said, I can build that in 2 days. So I picked up on that and I said, well, why don't we do a revenue share, and I'll also take 50% of the revenue in that division that you're building. And oddly enough, they said that would be wonderful. A company in that space sold for $40 million. So even if it's half that or a quarter of that or an eighth of that, I'd probably be pretty happy. So that started it, and then we did similar deals with when we were with others. So I don't know. It's just something that I probably would not have done if COVID wasn't around, because we would have just done business as usual. But I think we're all of the mindset, we have to be creative in everything we do just to stay alive here. So, but we're planning now to raise some money at the beginning of the year. That's the one at or whenever the coast is clear. We'd really like to bring on marketing staff. Well, everything we plan to do this year, bring on marketing staff, beef up marketing budgets. We want to increase our development staff and roll out the new products and integrations that we put on hold. So it's it would be good to get back to that, to tell you the truth. And we have another project that's major that our core product identifies whether you're a human or a bot based on your timing and movement characteristics. we have always had the theory that could you identify a specific individual based on that? And if you could use it for access controls or seat license compliance or things like that to see if if that person is that correct individual. We've been adapting this for medical applications, and we just applied for a grant with some partners to study this for traumatic brain injury in the military. But if we can get that technology built through our grant money, we might be able to adapt that to the consumer marketplace for early warning for Alzheimer's or head injuries with kids' sports and things like that. So other than doing the grant, we didn't do a lot of other things in that area that we wanted to do this year. So that's another thing that we kind of pushed down as we went along. So
Okay.
that's where we are.
Are you doing any fundraising, Harold? Are you guys beyond that?
Yeah, no, we're closing up a round on the 18th.
That's when we're closing our round.
Get it done before Christmas, my
Right,
friend.
man. Gotta get those South Carolina Angel tax credits in.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's too funny. It was an interesting year. I mean, we were raising, I think we talked about this last time, at the beginning of the year, we were going to go out and raise money, and it was just crazy. In February and March, people were like, we didn't know if we wanted to raise money anymore. Forget the investors getting distracted by their own portfolios.
Right.
And we kind of had gone through, and what's been really interesting to watch is so many more funds exist now than did in the Q1. It's like there's rolling funds and these funds and all this more. Like, there's just a ton of change of landscape in the investment world. And we've always tried to raise our capital from South Carolina and have done so successfully again this time. But South Carolina wasn't particularly ready maybe in March and April and May to truly put cash on the table like they are now. So we're pretty excited about where we are in the Carolinas for closing this round here. But it's been an interesting year just watching fundraising for different folks. But we've also seen with more of the M&A activity, better validation behind our valuation and have more comps in our space specifically that we didn't have before that have been beneficial to us. And we're really positioned. We've spent more time positioning to run or sprint next year while things were kind of slowed down. So we launched no new markets or no new divisions of the company. We just kind of got our ducks in a row and doubled down on just generating revenue, selling what's on the truck, as Bill said.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly, we took a slightly different approach. We had no intention of raising money this year. When we had enough cash, I mean, so this is December now. If we take no money in, we had cash to go into 2022, right? And so we had money. And so it was a matter of like, okay, well, that's good, but like, do we want to have enough money to just try and survive 2021? Or do we want to do, is what you're saying, is like invest in actually going to market and being faster? And so that's when we decided to raise a round. Google actually invested $100,000 in us a couple of months ago. And so we're the only company in the state of South Carolina to get their investment. We were one of like 24 companies to get a $100,000 investment. And so now, as we talk to more competitors, yesterday we've talked to major players like AEG, which is Live Nation's largest competitors. Understanding the landscape has been so important. So it's been interesting to see the nuance of the conversation where people were like, hey, would you take an investment? And then we said, well, maybe we should like actually formalize our process around this. So we started doing that back in September and said, okay, well, let's look at this, what this looks like for Q4. And so it's actually worked out pretty well for us. So it's been really good.
Yeah.
On that, hey, Harold, on that note, just with some of the others, and Julia, keep us honest on the time here as well. What is your view? If you look at, you've got vaccines around the corner, you have the market hitting highs, which seems to be kind of the reverse, where you've got unemployment that's kind of going down. Are you bullish on where you see not only on the funding but just on the revenue side, and why? I'd love to get kind of everybody to chime in to go, what would you do differently now? You know that the pandemic is not going away. We just seem to be able to manage it better. And what impact does that have on your company's plans?
Yeah, so I'm bullish on revenue primarily because I think, there's a lot of different technology solutions that are out there that are saying like, oh, we do this. But I think the biggest thing that we try and emphasize, which is different, which a couple of our investors, our new investors have picked up on, as well as a couple new customers, is how much we emphasize trust. Inherently, I think that we've all gotten into this point when it comes to data, where organizations are like data, 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 and they're getting so much of it as possible from us as consumers. And one thing I often talk about is how, as consumers, we know Equifax lost our data. We know Google misuses our data. And we know Facebook flat out weaponizes our own data against us in some cases. And so as an organization, you need to be in a position to make sure that when consumers and citizens share their data with you, they know they can trust you. And so one of the things that we've done from an IP standpoint was created a trademark around glass box technology solutions, which is different from your standard black box. Like, oh, it's all safe in this black box. Don't worry about it. It's over here. Now we say you should be able to increase trust and transparency simultaneously while maintaining, if not improving, security. And so we're bullish on revenue because we think the organizations that are trying to come back online that lost billions of dollars this year are going to need help with their messaging to their consumers. Even once the vaccine is out, people are still going to need that messaging to know that this organization is doing this, and your marketing videos of people wearing gloves and wearing masks and the sanitation stuff you're doing in between everyone sitting. Like, there's a lot that's going to have to happen. And I think that by focusing on our messaging being on building trust and building community, those are the two things that we really focus on. So I'm bullish on that. I'm not as interested in the funding side. I think that sometimes founders get kind of caught up like fundraising just for the heck of it. I would rather do revenue. And so this year we grew around 270%, and next year I think we'll grow another 300, maybe even more. And so we have opportunity to really emphasize what it looks like to focus on revenue next year with more cash in the bank.
And I know we want to allow some time for questions. Any one of our panelists, Julie or Laura, I know you're there. Bill, it's good to have you back on video. Anybody else just want to make a quick couple of comments before we try to entertain some questions?
I'd love to get Laura's perspective on what it's like to gain the consumer bump, probably from all the attention with time. Congrats on that again. And then, of course, as Julie's talking about exits, I think that perspective is interesting. Do you think that Q4, we just saw Slack get acquired by Salesforce? We just see Airbnb going IPO and DoorDash is going IPO. Like, I would love to get your thoughts as an expert in that space too. And not to make me the moderator, but y'all are super smart.
Great job.
Step in, Harold. I'll put in a few words just about the Q4 bump. I think, thank you so much for the kind words. And we were really thrilled to get that honor. We worked really hard to get the application in, and it was a process of about 3 or 4 months for anybody interested in submitting an invention to time. But it was a kind of a journey that really sort of aligned with what we were doing with the consumer market, because we hadn't really focused on the D2C market, right? We were really focused on B2B primarily for the first, 2 quarters of the year, until we realized, all these parents are contacting us about home robots. And for those of you who don't know, we developed smart robot tutors that are AI enabled that basically tutor kids in the core subject areas. And now we actually have, in addition to the core subject areas, storytelling, socio-emotional learning, and that type of thing that have added on to the content that we offer. But we did see a big bump in terms of consumer sales. It was, like I said, it kind of all aligned when the time announcement came out. We were already sort of marketing to that population and saw that our sales in that department grew 6-fold in just about 6 weeks. So we had a lot of demand on consumer product or consumer robots for that 6 weeks. And then what we noticed is when kids went back to school, we really pivoted back to talking to the schools, because they were very concerned about what tools they had available to support all these kids coming back to school. So many of them who were testing below proficient and testing much farther below proficient than they had initially expected. So I think it's been for us, it's been a learning experience, and keeping, I think the building of trust is an important underlying factor, probably for every business, but especially if you're in the people business. If you actually have people investing a lot of money in purchasing your product or in your service, you really need to have that kind of ongoing relationship with them. So that for us was kind of the keystone of where we started to work more towards the consumer market, and and then kind of added back in our school market when they started reopening. So for 2021, what we did was we actually onboarded a number of new resellers that are going to be distributing the product for us, not just here in the US, but now in the UAE, in the UK. We just signed somebody on in UAE, the UK, and in Africa. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing how those sales kind of turn around in the next year, because we're not in this boat alone, right? People all over the world are struggling with schools being closed and with COVID. So for us, this was an opportunity to kind of look outside and say, okay, well, if we're going to have trouble with schools being closed here and they may be open in other countries because maybe they've had a lesser incidence of COVID, or they've just had a different approach to dealing with it. Maybe we should then spread some seeds elsewhere and make sure that we can continue those conversations with people in the schools, no matter where they are.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. That was good. Julie, how about any comments from you? Is Harold?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So to kind of back up some things, both Ryan, Harold have mentioned on the funding, and Bill, this summer was the distressed sale boom. Like, in other words, once it set in that a lot of these companies that already were struggling, they weren't quite where they needed to be with revenue, they were running out of money. So that wave, July, August, September, companies that had cash were just going out and buying up any market share they could from those distressed companies, because they could get them at a bargain, get them off the street so they're not competing. They grew their market share. Well, that's sort of waning now. And now the M&A market's coming back to normal, meaning that companies are going, okay, I bought up all the people who are a little bit more on the desperate side. Now I'm going to go back to classic M&A, looking for the right fit, the right strategy for my business. And whenever any of you get to that point where you're starting to think about it, the best decision that I've made in the last 12 months was searching and finding the right M&A partner. And I've never had one before. I've never gone out and had to actually pay a firm to learn about me, package up the business, and help me get it out into the market to the right buyers, and basically hold the line and say, no, we're not even going to talk to you if you're not, somewhere in this ballpark range, of what you're trying to get a return, for your shareholders. That's been one of the best things that I've ever done. And they've been doing a spectacular job of educating me too, and telling me where's the market, where are things going right now. So I've learned a lot this year, and thankfully Q1 is looking normal and a boom. So we're going to actually start to see a lot of bigger M&A activity that's normal.
That's good. It's a great point. I mean, it sounds like Harold.
Yeah.
And in cheery news, my son, who's on Wall Street, just sent a text that Morgan Stanley just put out a study that the pandemic will be behind us next September. So just a little cheery note. Cheery. Yeah, but as I think coupled what everybody has been talking about is we've just had to find different ways to do things, and I think everybody has. And we've always prided ourselves in our customer service, in that all of our developers and even myself take customer service calls because every new product enhancement that we have came from those calls where people said, boy, it was great. I wish you could do this though. So we've added that to our product. But it got out of hand. In normal times, we would have hired customer service reps to help us, and they probably would have been local. But we had to come up with a more economical alternative. And we found a company in Kenya, and all of the reps that are helping us have undergraduate degrees in computer science. The supervisor has a master's degree. And in the second week, they were as good or better than any of us ever were on the calls. And they're also getting way more 5-star reviews than we ever got. So there's that too. So
That's great.
So we stumbled into that, but we're sure glad we found them. And we've actually sent 2 other companies over there, and they're using them and had the same results. So it's really a good find, and we're going to keep expanding with them. And now for customer service for all our new products and integrations, we're just planning on loading more over there and adding more reps over in Kenya. And they're terrific. Can't speak highly enough about them.
That's a good point. Well, they're not
We probably got to wrap up, I would think, Lee, right? But I do think that the expediting innovation and finding operational efficiency in businesses has been expedited tenfold by everyone who had to. And if you weren't a good business leader or did not have a good business, you probably found the door faster. So I think it helped maybe to kind of clean some dead weight out of the process. There are definitely casualties in business that are not rightly achieved, but for the most part, I think it really helped us move the ball along with a lot of folks, and those who have figured out how to pivot are coming back strong. And we're seeing that, being in the media space, we're capturing dollars from all types of industries, and they're all moving. And we've had our highest performance ever, but that only happens because those other businesses are succeeding. So the trends that we're seeing on the media side are pretty strong, which leads me to believe that a lot of the companies locally are gaining their confidence back and the path through 2021.
All right, I'm going to interrupt here. Thank you all so much for just chiming in and keeping the conversation going throughout, audio concerns and whatnot. I appreciate everyone on the line. I knew I should have made this longer than 45 minutes. Why would I only make this 45 minutes? You guys are rock stars. And the first question that came in, there's 3 questions and we have 1 minute left. So if anybody has to log off, I totally understand, but I'm going to get through at least one of them for right now. The first question that came in was a comment about how awesome the community is that I'm looking at right here, and everybody else on the line as well. The community is amazing. The conversation is amazing. And then the question is how do you all keep this community going, day to day? And the example is are you all on Slack? Do you participate in a platform like that? If it's not Slack, what is it? And how do you all keep in communication with other entrepreneurs around the world, really? Harold, I saw you nod your head.
Yeah, so Slack is core to our company's running. We do Monday morning sprint call planning where everyone's on video and we talk about what we're going to build that week. Technical team and sales team. Then we use Slack all day. We have a random channel where I talk about the food that I cooked that weekend, or someone posts a random video clip, and then obviously those sub channels. And then towards the end of the week, we've got our sprint review or show and tell, where if you can't show it, you didn't build it. And the product team talks with the sales team and kind of does that. But externally, I think that Twitter is a huge and underutilized tool in South Carolina. I will make that sweeping statement. I think that majority of my entrepreneur friends in South Carolina are not actively on Twitter. I know that I've raised at least $1 million from people who I'd never met in real life from people on Twitter. And so for me, that's one of the biggest channels. There's a new app called Clubhouse, which is now suddenly, moving more into South Carolina, but it's an audio-based chat app. You can imagine this type of call, but only audio and different conversations. And that app has also opened up some conversations as well. But for me, I think Twitter to me is the most powerful social tool because it's not LinkedIn where it's curated to where it's only showing your accomplishments. It's your thoughts, it's the things you read, it's the conversations you reply to. So I'm a huge fan of using Twitter specifically to build community, not just locally, but to connect in conversations and connect with people you likely wouldn't have been in the same room with due to geographical and time zone constraints.
I would jump in really quick and say LinkedIn for us has been #1 best untapped resource, hands down. Because Harold, I can understand what you're saying about building community and kind of getting the whole picture of the company and of the person tweeting. But also for us, especially with a brand new product in the market that people aren't necessarily searching for, it's really helpful to have the background, to have the context in which you're contacting people within, sort of very specific channels of industry, right? So if I'm looking for a specific size district, or I'm looking for a specific person to collaborate with, it's just much easier to start that conversation. It doesn't get lost in their inbox. The invite or the conversation can take place in a, I think in just with a context that is really valuable, I think, to working together. We've had sales, multiple sales come through that directly. So
Are you
yeah.
using Sales Navigator?
What was that?
Are you using Sales Navigator?
In LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Or no?
We use Sales Navigator to refine and dig even deeper into the actual direct relationships to even more narrow the search field to get the direct decision makers at the businesses.
I should qualify no with, we use a third party to actually do all of our connecting, and then we do the follow-up. So it's possible that they use it. It's a good question. Yeah.
I'd second Harold's Twitter comment too, though. I mean, that's my number one, anything in the investment space right now. Business decision makers. I've been able to connect with the CEOs of lots of companies that I never thought would ever give me the time of day. Always through Twitter, never through never make the connection through LinkedIn. Same person. They'll say, I didn't even see you. There's so much junk in the LinkedIn inbox that every salesperson's hitting you in LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Yeah, right now, that's true. Julie, do we still have more time? Time for one more question?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. And this question comes from a client company that we work with at SC Launch. And the question is we are considering developing a new product, but I'm evaluating a company with a similar product that appears to be not doing well. What is the most appropriate way to approach the founder about a merger or acquisition?
Oh, you got two people that can answer it. Well, you got a lot of them that can answer that question.
Julie, you should definitely go first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna back, you got two guys here, brilliant, Harold and Ryan, both saying Twitter, so all of a sudden I'm thinking, hey, I would, if it were me, I would just be authentic and straight up, right? And just come with the approach of, gee, you built a really cool business. The reason I say it's cool is because I'm about to do one that's very, very similar. I think you've got an amazing product. Give them kudos for what they've been able to do, and then just say, I would really like to talk to you because there might be a way to partner and take on the market together. That's the way I would approach it. It's just very authentic and very straight up.
Yep. The faster you know, the better off you are, because we've gone down that rabbit hole. And also make sure you understand who controls that company. We've gone down the conversation with an executive for like 4 months and found out that they didn't have control of their company. And it's and the whole thing just didn't happen because that person actually couldn't make this decision and didn't tell their board. So understanding how a company is set up and structured appropriately is kind of important. And you'll know real fast whether or not that person's even interested in the conversation.
Yeah. Tactically about that, I think there's two things. One, definitely talk to your lawyer to see what kind of information they can get. To Heafy's point, being able to get cap table information is really good. We work with Morris Manning and Martin. Shout out to them out of Atlanta. They have helped us get some great information. So that's one way. And of course, what Julie said, but the other opportunity is if you have an investor that is interested in supporting this endeavor, being able to have that investor reach out to the company, say, hey, listen, I'm invested in this company. I'm interested in your company as well because I think it could be complementary. Would you be open to talking to the CEO? And I think that bridge is a little bit easier because it's a person, that founder or executive may have their ears perk up that someone who's invested already in the space also thinks that their company is interesting and maybe they could work together and have them bridge it. That way you don't send your email and then now their entire executive team is like scrutinizing every part of your social platform and trying to figure out if you're trying to distract them or if this is real or a bot or anything to that effect. So that's kind of how I would navigate it.
Those are really good points, guys.
If the target company is really in trouble, if the target company is having trouble, typically the CEO would welcome the lifeline. So it's pretty rare in those situations that they don't welcome the call. They're looking for anything at that point, and they've exhausted all financing and things like that. So I think
Yeah.
they'd welcome the call. And then I think all the due diligence that Harold and Ryan brought up, I think are right on at that point to see if that truly is the person, and if the company may be unsalvageable when you get information from like Harold is talking about.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah,
Julie, how
all
we doing?
right. I think we're all out of time right now. I want to thank everybody on the line. Lee McElwennan, thank you for hosting this. I will let you say your own thank yous.
I was gonna echo the same thing. This is a great group. I mean, it's I don't even have to prepare questions because once it gets going, it just riffs off of it, and you can tell it feels like we're old friends. So
You got the wrong color outfit today, though, Lee. You missed the
Whoops.
memo we sent to each other this morning.
I know it's supposed to go blue. Maybe. I know. If I'll have to blame my wife. We threw that out there. I figured, well, at least I had to wear something that had collars on it. So that was the only thing. That was in there. Hey, listen, thanks everybody. Again, really, really appreciate everybody's time. Also, the folks that just joined us, that missed the other one, we'd love to keep doing these. So I'm going to throw that out there that if we can continue these, depending upon everybody's schedule, we'd love to continue. And for Julia's, go ahead. Our in-person event is scheduled for April. So keep it on the calendar. Thanks again for everybody's time. Really appreciate it.
Great to see everybody.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye. Have a good rest of the week.
Bye. Have a great one. See y'all.
Happy
You too.
holidays.